Hi, this is Sandy with SDS Digital and the Accord Sequarallel. In this tips and tricks video, we'll have a look at driving modular percussion while not in drums mode, and methods to use the Sequarallel as a multiple clock generator. This patch drives a kick, sampled snare, digital snare, and a hat. The velocity CC jacks are patched into snare 2's decay, the sampled snare's EQ mid-range, and snare 2's tone. The 1 volt per octave CV outputs go to the kick tone, snare 1's sample rate, snare 2's cut filter, and kick noise cutoff. There's also a synth from tracks 2 to make it interesting. This is how it sounds. 2 blocks in the playlist are tracks 1A, and there's 1 tracks 1B to add some variance. In tracks 1A, each lane is sending gates to trigger the drums, while the CV outputs from the note numbers are controlling the various modifiers. It's only 8 steps, but there's some note effects to compensate for that. In lane 1, the notes are higher to affect the kick's tone at the bottom. In lane 2, the higher F7 note is upping snare 1's sample rate. The voltage on the CV jacks will depend on how you have it tuned for VCOs. I use the default notes 36, so anything lower will result in a negative voltage. In settings, you can see the clock rate is default, times 2. Here's row 1 on its own. Row 2, the snare sample. The rate change adds a Woody's kind of sound, really. Row 3, the digital snare. And row 4, the subtle hat. As we're in settings for tracks 1A, 1B keeps playing all lanes normally. MIDI out on both is channel 1. It's nice to be able to control more aspects of percussion from the sequence. Looking under MIDI push at the bottom, you can see I've disabled the output of channel 1 for link out and MIDI out. This is because the notes are going to be unusable for anything else, right? The 3 modifiers on the velocity CC jacks are being manipulated via running envelopes. The 4th one was drawn from the kick's audio output earlier. I ended up not using it here though. These envelopes are being triggered in various ways by notes or bars or just free running. However, I saw fit to produce the FX I wanted for each drum. So there's drums without drum mode. Here's some unusual ways to generate a clock signal from the Sequarallel. When thinking about ways to create equal clocking, the tracks trackers come immediately to mind, but that's not where I'm going to start. This first method can generate a clock from envelopes. I'll do a little demo on the CC1 to CC4 jacks. This is 1 per clock, 2 per clock, 3 per clock, and 4 per clock, just to match the envelope numbers. But it could be any number of pulses per clock, really. It is important to get the envelope time and trigger ironed out right away though. Using the parametric method of making an envelope, a sine wave was carefully sized, amplified to straighten out the edges a bit, and then a wave step to further reduce the on-off time. That one is a pretty tricky adjustment though. Anyway, it can be done. Next is tracks from the CV jacks. For this to work, the note CV must change from low to high and back to low. Here's a test on the CV jacks. As a result, this makes the gates double clocks. You may have noticed, even though it's blurry, lane 3 only has a pair of notes. This works because Note Effects is echoing them 2 more times. Both must echo, CV on, CV off. Here's that double gate result from the 2 notes on every clock. Lane 2 has 2 pairs like this. It still could be used for something though, right? Here's the grid more clearly. So I'll arm group 2 to play the other tracks, 1B. This one will use the gates for clock outputs, as would be expected. Now you're probably wondering, how is that CV still pulsing with only 1 note in the sequence? A little trick. A short glide is on in its note effects, and the start of the glide is a high note, which returns to the lower note in lane 1. Here's proof. Gone. So here's the gates, all on even multiplications. As tracks length can be any number of up to 64 steps, almost any useful clock multiplication can be done with echo or chop and some imagination. Even 24 or 96 ppqn could be done. Just remember to shorten the notes to be closer to 50% duty cycle, so like 12 ticks or less. The CVs will of course be half, because there's still high and low notes consecutively. Another cool way to generate clocks, odd overlapping clocks, is to create them in a sequencer software like FL Studio and record them into a layer. This takes a bit of planning though. I decided I wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 clocks all in the same recording, overlapping. This means I had to loop off at 30 1/16 steps in FL Studio and space them evenly. All of those rates can go evenly into 30, but because the layers record by the bar, the record length must be set to 60 bars. 60 divided by 4 beats equals 15. And the FL Studio loop at 60/16. Each different clock rate is on its own MIDI channel from 1 to 6. This will make it easy to select them from a CV mode to get them to the gate jacks. I will post a link to this song project sysEx if you would like to give it a go. So I've rigged CV mode 2 with channels 1 to 4 and CV mode 3 with channels 3 to 6. This will make them easy to access. They are sourced directly from layer 1 to avoid any future confusion. The FL Studio 15 beats for 60 bars has been recorded into the layer QuickBox, as can be seen in the layer bar step editor. Let's check them out. Every 15 clocks. That ticking in the background is directly from the clock input. Every 7.5 clocks. Every 5 clocks. Every 3.75 clocks. Every 3 clocks. And every 2.5 clocks. These aren't so important with respect to the original clock as they are relating to each other. I'll turn up the resulting MIDI of these channels from 1 to 6. Each channel has a percussive instrument. Some are the same, but it gives a demonstration of how these different clocks interact. Well, that's it for tips and tricks number 2. Stay tuned for future videos in this series. I'm Sandy Sims. Thanks for watching.